In a land where the sun kissed the earth with golden warmth and the winds sang through the tall baobab trees, there lay a village untouched by time. The soil was red and rich, the people proud and full of stories. This was a place where tales were more than just entertainment. They were a way of life. Stories guided the hearts of the living and whispered lessons from the ancestors. Among these stories, there is one that has been told for generations. A tale that traveled from grandmother to granddaughter across fireside gatherings and moonlit ceremonies. It is the story of a girl. A girl who saw beyond riches and status. A girl who challenged what others dared not. A girl who refused the richest man in the land. Her name was Zara. Zara was born in the village of Kalenga, nestled near the banks of the great Zambezi River. Her father was a potter, skilled with his hands, shaping earth into beautiful vessels used for carrying water, storing grain, or offering blessings to the spirits. Her mother was a healer, known across neighboring villages for her knowledge of roots, herbs, and the old ways. Zara grew up in a small clay house with a thatched roof, surrounded by chickens, laughter, and the occasional mischief of monkeys stealing bananas. She had no brothers or sisters, but she had many friends, and the elders often said that she had an old soul in a young body. From the time she could walk, Zara showed curiosity beyond her years. She would sit by the river and ask questions about the stars, the meaning of dreams, and why the birds always returned after the rains. Her mother said she had the mind of a griot, a keeper of stories, though she rarely spoke unless she had something meaningful to say. She wasn't the most beautiful girl in Kalenga, but there was something radiant about her. Her eyes held depth. Her voice had calm strength, and her presence comforted even strangers. Children ran to her when they scraped their knees. Elders trusted her to gather herbs. Even the dogs seemed to follow her without reason. Then, one season, as the mango trees ripened and the drums of the harvest celebration echoed through the hills, news came from the east. Nagola was coming. Nagola, the richest man in the entire region. A trader, warrior, landowner, and kingmaker. He was known to travel with gold-draped caravans, his horses fed with millet soaked in milk and honey. His name was spoken with awe, sometimes with envy, and always with caution. He was not just rich, he was powerful, and he was looking for a wife. He had declared his intention to visit every village along the river and choose a bride. Not just any bride, but a queen for his growing estate. She would be honored, protected, dressed in silks, and fed with the finest fruits. In return, she must be obedient, respectful, and worthy of his name. Kalenga was the third village on his route. As soon as the news arrived, the village transformed. Mothers rushed to prepare their daughters. Girls braided their hair with cowrie. Shells painted their eyes with charcoal and practiced their curtsies. The elders sharpened their greetings, and the village leader ordered the best dancers to rehearse for the welcoming ceremony. Everyone was excited. Everyone wanted to be seen. Everyone except Zara. "Why don't you get ready?" Friend Amma asked as she scrubbed her skin with palm oil. Zara only smiled. "I don't wish to be a prize," Amma scoffed. "He's not just any man. He's Nagalo. They say he has a throne made of elephant tusks. You'll never have to work again." Zara turned her gaze to the distant hills. Some work is worth doing, and not all thrones are comfortable. Her mother overheard but said nothing. She knew her daughter. Zara had the strength of her grandmother, a woman who once turned down a chieftain's son to marry a humble farmer with laughter in his eyes. That same grandmother had said, "A woman must choose with her spirit, not her stomach." When the day came, Kalenga shimmered with excitement. Children stood on tiptoes. Drums echoed from every corner. The village had never looked so alive. Garlands of wildflowers were draped over huts, and incense made of crushed herbs wafted through the air. Then, the dust cloud appeared on the horizon. They had arrived. First came the guards, tall and silent, carrying spears that glinted in the sun. Then came dancers dressed in leopard skins, twirling and leaping. Following them were horses, shining with decorated saddles and golden reins at the center. Atop a black horse as tall as a bull, rode N*GOL. He was exactly as the story said. Broad shoulders, eyes like molten stone, skin gleaming with sheen, butter and pride. Gold rings adorned his wrists, and an eagle feather crowned his headdress. Behind him trailed baskets of treasure, ivory, beads, bolts of silk, and enough gold to blind a man. The villagers bowed low. Children were hushed. The dancers stopped. Ngolo dismounted with the poise of a king. He said few words, but looked around with sharp, assessing eyes. Then he pointed at Zara. "You," he said. "You will be my wife." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Women smiled with envy. Men nodded in approval. The chief clapped his hands in delight. Everyone was sure this was destiny. Zara stood still. She neither bowed nor ran. She met Ngolo's gaze calmly, her hands at her sides. "Do you always choose without asking?" she asked. The crowd froze. Ngolo raised an eyebrow. "I know what I want. I take what I want," Zara replied. "Then perhaps you don't truly know what it is." A stunned silence followed. Ngolo smiled, but it was tight. "Come, you will see my world. Then you will understand." Zara shook her head. "If you want a wife, ask for her heart, not her body, not her silence." The silence was now heavy. The chief cleared his throat. "Zara, this is not the time. She has spirit," Ngolo interrupted. "I like that. Let her come with me for 3 days. Then she can decide." The crowd murmured. Some nodded. Some whispered that she should be honored. Our parents were summoned. After tense conversation, it was agreed. Zara would visit Ngolo's estate, not as a servant or bride, but as a guest. 3 days, then she would choose. Before leaving, Zara kissed her mother's hand and hugged her father tightly. "If I do not return," she whispered, "know that I followed my truth." And with that, she rode off beside Ngolo, toward a world of gold and secrets. Zara's journey to Ngolo's estate was long and winding. The path twisted through sun-scorched plains, crossed rivers bridged by fallen trees, and passed by ancient baobab groves where vultures circled overhead. But Ngolo's caravan was swift and well-guarded. His servants rode silently, their eyes sharp and faces unreadable. Beside them, gold and silk gleamed in the sunlight. Zara, seated on a fine horse with a carved wooden saddle, rode quietly, watching everything with the calm of someone who didn't fear what was ahead. She wasn't frightened, but she was alert. By the time they arrived, the sun was low and painted, the sky in shades of fire and mango. Before her stood Ngolo's estate, vast and dazzling. There were walls carved from white stone, gates of bronze shaped like lion heads, and fountains that sang as they spilled water into golden basins. Slaves ran to untie her sandals. Maids in colorful wraps offered her mango juice and cool towels scented with hibiscus. Still, Zara remained composed. She was led through polished courtyards where flamingos walked freely, and into a room where the floors were tiled with mother of pearl. A room larger than her entire home. "You'll sleep here," said a tall woman with a stiff voice. "Your bath will be drawn. Tomorrow, the master will show you his world." That night, as she lay on a bed soft enough to swallow her whole, Zara stared at the carved ceiling and whispered to herself, "Even the finest cage is still a cage." The next day began early. A line of servants brought breakfast fruits from distant islands, porridge laced with spices, and golden bread shaped like sunbursts. Zara ate little. Then Ngolo arrived, dressed in crimson robes, his arms shining with bangles. "Come," he said, "let me show you what awaits you." They walked through his lands. Acres of rice paddies shimmered under the morning sun. Of cattle grazed near a glittering lake. His guards bowed as he passed. His workers bent lower. "This," Ngolo said proudly, "is mine, all of it, and it will be yours if you choose wisely." Zara looked across the beauty but said nothing. He led her to a hall filled with gifts from distant kingdoms, drums carved from sacred trees, spears tipped with obsidian, scrolls written in foreign tongues. "These are tokens from rulers who fear or admire me," he said. They passed into another room, this one full of silk. Crimson, sapphire, gold, cloth that shimmered like moonlight. Then into another, where jars overflowed with rubies and sapphires, as if someone had captured pieces of the sky and earth and sealed them in clay. You could have a different one. For every day of the year, Ngolo said, every day a new color, a new taste, a new pleasure. Zara finally spoke. "And what would I give in return?" He paused. "Your obedience, your loyalty, and your silence when I speak." Zara looked at him, her eyes steady. "Then all this, however beautiful, would belong to you still, not to me." Ngolo laughed. "You are stubborn, but I like that. I will teach you comfort." "No," she replied. "You would teach me how to forget who I am." That night, Zara walked through the garden of the estate alone. The stars above glittered more clearly here, but they seemed distant. Trapped beyond all this splendor, suddenly, she heard soft weeping. Following the sound, she found a servant girl crouched behind a fig tree, her hands over her face. Zara knelt beside her. "What's wrong?" she asked. The girl looked up, startled. Her eyes were swollen. "Please, mistress, if they see me speak to you, I'll be punished." "Then I'll say you didn't," Zara whispered. The girl hesitated, then spoke in a voice cracked with fear. "We are not wives here. We are ornaments. No one laughs. We live, but we do not live. Boo, not stay. Please." Zara nodded slowly, and in that moment, a decision settled quietly in her chest. The next morning, Ngolo stood before her in his throne room, waiting for her answer. He was dressed in emerald robes and wore a lion's tooth on his neck. The village? Musicians had been summoned, and dancers stood ready. A feast was being prepared. "Zara," he said, "have you made your choice?" Zara stepped forward, dressed in a simple blue wrap, the kind worn in Kalanga during morning chores. She looked him in the eye and said clearly, "Yes, I choose my spirit." A stunned silence followed. A bird chirped outside, unaware of the tension. In the room, "I will not marry you, Ngolo, not for your land, your jewels, or your throne. I do not belong to anyone who wishes to own me." Gasps rang out. A servant dropped a platter. Somewhere, a dancer stepped back. Ngolo's face darkened. "Do you know what you refuse?" "Yes," she said. "I refuse to forget who I am." Without waiting for permission, Zara turned and walked out of the palace, her steps light. Her back straight guards looked to Ngolo for orders, but he raised his hand. He said nothing. Zara walked through the courtyard, past the fountains and golden walls, past the flamingos and the statues. The gates opened for her as she stepped into the open plains. The wind greeted her with a warm breeze, and the trees seemed to bow slightly. She was free. She did not know what waited ahead, but she knew what she had left behind, and that was enough. Zara walked for hours, leaving behind the glittering walls of Ngolo's estate. Her sandals worn, her back warmed by the afternoon sun. The path ahead was unfamiliar, winding through brush and low hills, but she walked without fear. Each step felt like a return, a return to truth, to self, to spirit. By nightfall, she reached the edge of a quiet forest. Birds called from the trees and fireflies blinked like stars in the undergrowth. There was no roof above her, no bed below, but she had peace. She sat beneath a tall tree, wrapped herself in her shawl, and let sleep take her gently. In the early morning, a strange silence surrounded her. The birds had stopped singing. The wind held its breath. Zara opened her eyes and found a woman sitting nearby. Old, wrapped in faded red cloth, her hair silver, her back curved with age, but her eyes as bright and sharp as a hawk's. The woman stared at her without speaking. Zara sat up slowly. "Who are you?" The old woman did not answer. Instead, she held out a small calabash bowl filled with water. Zara hesitated, then took the bowl and drank. The water was cool, sweet, and unlike anything she had ever tasted. It seemed to reach into her bones, clearing her mind, calming her spirit. When she handed the bowl back, the old woman finally spoke. "You left gold for dust." "Why?" Zara answered. "Because dust is honest. It does not try to own you." The woman nodded, her lips twitching into the beginning of a smile. "And yet dust cannot feed you." Zara looked around. "It can grow a seed." Many leave comfort for freedom, the woman said, but not all survive the journey between the two. Zara tilted her head. "Do you live here alone?" "I live where people pass through. Some are lost. Some are found." Zara blinked. "Are you a spirit?" The old woman laughed, but it was a low, crackling sound, like fire licking dry leaves. "That depends on how deeply you see." She stood slowly and motioned for Zara to follow. They walked through the forest, where the trees arched high overhead. Like ancient guardians, the woman's steps were slow but sure. Birds returned to song, and the sun filtered through the leaves like gold dust. They came upon a clearing where a small bird lay on the ground, wings trembling, unable to fly. The old woman pointed. "What would you do?" Zara knelt beside the bird. It had a torn wing, injured but alive. Gently, she scooped it up, tore a strip from her shawl, and wrapped the wing carefully. Then she found a shallow dish and filled it with water from her gourd. The bird drank, blinked, and nestled into her palm. She turned to the woman. "It will heal." The old woman nodded. "You see value where others see weakness. I see life." They sat in silence as the wind stirred the trees. Then the old woman said, "Do you wish to return home?" Zara thought about her family, her village, the faces she missed. "Yes," she said, "but not yet. I want to walk further. I want to find my own place." The woman's eyes sparkled. "Then your true journey begins." She handed Zara a walking stick carved with swirling patterns and pressed a small stone into her palm, smooth, black, and warm to the touch. "When you are lost, hold this," she said. "It will show you what cannot be seen." Zara thanked her and turned to leave the clearing, but when she looked back, the old woman was gone. Only the bowl, the bird, and the silence remained. Zara continued her journey, the stick in one hand, the stone in her pouch, and a fire in her chest that no wind could extinguish. As days passed, she met people on her path. A grieving widow who had forgotten how to laugh. A boy who had lost his voice in fear. A farmer who no longer believed the rains would return. To each of them, she gave something, a word, a song, a moment of listening, and they gave her something back. Hope, strength, direction. One evening, as she sat beside a river, the same bird she had once healed fluttered down beside her. Its wing was strong again. It chirped and danced in the air before flying in wide circles, as if inviting her to follow. She smiled. "I see you," she whispered, and then, from the path behind her, came the sound of footsteps. A man emerged. Tall, with skin like copper clay, clothes dusty from travel, and a carved wooden flute in his hand. His eyes met Zara's, and something quiet passed between them. Not fire, not thunder, but something deeper. Recognition. He bowed his head. "May I share your fire?" Zara nodded. That night, they spoke under the stars. His name was Kofi. He was a traveler, a weaver of stories, a seeker of meaning. He had once been the son of a wealthy ruler, but had left it all behind after dreaming of a woman who would teach him more than gold ever could. "I've been looking for something real," he said. Zara smiled. Then perhaps we were both walking toward each other all along. The fire crackled softly as Zara and Kofi sat in silence. The stars above blinked with ancient wisdom, and the river beside them whispered secrets only the patient could hear. Kofi played a gentle melody on his wooden flute, a tune that rose like mist and fell like feathers. Zara listened with her eyes closed, the music painting pictures in her mind of home, of the path she had walked, and of the unknown road ahead. When the song faded, Kofi set the flute down. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. "Zara." Turned to him, who he looked into the fire. "A girl I dreamed of when I was a boy. A girl who stood alone on a cliff, staring into the wind, unmoved by storms. She didn't speak, but I knew she saw everything." Zara smiled. "And what did the dream mean?" He shrugged. "That I'd have to walk many miles before finding the truth, or myself, or her." Zara gazed into the flames. "Oh, maybe they are all the same." They stayed together that night, speaking little, but feeling much. In the days that followed, they traveled side by side. They shared food, songs, and stories. With every step, Kofi's laughter blended with Zara's calm. And their journey became less about distance and more about meaning. One morning, they arrived at a village where people were gathered under a baobab tree, their faces worried. "What has happened?" Zara asked. An elder stepped forward. "There is sickness in our fields. The maize wilts before it grows. Our children have fevers. The river goddess is angry." Zara stepped forward, remembering her mother's teachings. She asked for water, herbs, and silence. For 2 days, she treated the sick and walked the dry fields, listening, touching, learning. On the 3rd day, she stood under the tree and spoke. "The land is not cursed, it is thirsty. A dam has blocked the river's song. Break the dam, let the water flow." The villagers obeyed, and as the sun set that evening, water returned to the fields. The children laughed, the elders wept. A feast was held in Zara's honor. Kofi watched her that night, and something stirred in his heart, not desire, but reverence. "You are more than a girl," he said to her. "You are a storm and a calm after it. You carry the earth in your..." Voice Zara touched his hand gently. "And you? You are the silence where wisdom hides." That night, under the stars, he told her the truth. "My father was once a great chief," Kofi said, "but he cared more for gold than for his people. I left to understand what makes a man truly rich. I hid my name, my past, and walked across many lands." Zara looked at him. "Tay, what did you find?" Kofi reached into his pouch and pulled out a small cloth, inside which lay a golden ring carved with the symbol of his tribe, a rising sun over water. "I am the rightful heir to the kingdom of Amadu," he said softly. "But I will not return to claim a throne built on greed. Not unless I can change what it means." Zara was quiet, but her eyes held no fear. "Then let us build a new kind of kingdom," she said. "One where truth sits on the throne." Meanwhile, far away in the golden halls of Ngolo's estate, storms were rising. His crops had failed. His trade caravans were being attacked by desert raiders. His gold stores had been robbed by one of his own guards. Whispers began to spread in the villages that the man who once held everything was losing everything. He called for his advisors. They brought maps, warnings, numbers, but nothing could stop what was happening. His name no longer inspired fear or admiration. It brought only curses and warnings. One night, he stood alone on his palace roof, staring at the stars. "I offered her the world," he whispered, and she walked away. But even now, part of him didn't understand why Dot, Zara, and Kofi's journey took them back to Kalenga. When they arrived, the village welcomed them with open arms. Zara's parents wept with joy, and children gathered around her like bees to a flower. The chief, now older and humbled, bowed his head in respect. "You left as a girl," he said, "and returned as a light." Zara and Kofi stayed in Kalenga, teaching, planting, helping. Slowly, a new way of living spread from that small village. One where wisdom was valued over wealth, where stories were shared more than coins, where truth fed the soul more than feasts. But the journey wasn't over. One morning, a group of messengers arrived from Amadou. They had searched far and wide for Kofi. "The council awaits you," they said. "Your people are tired of empty power. They remember your father's sins, but hope for your name." Kofi looked to Zara. She said only one word: "Go." "But only if I go with you," she added. Hand in hand, they journeyed to Amadou. The people lined the streets, not throwing flowers or gold, but holding out their hands in quiet welcome. Kofi did not take the throne alone. He named Zara his equal, not queen by marriage, but queen by wisdom. Together, they ruled not with iron, but with listening. And somewhere deep in the forest, under a tree older than kings, an old woman watched with a knowing smile, and a bird with a once broken wing flew in circles above her head. Years passed. Under the leadership of Zara and Kofi, the kingdom of Amadou changed, not with sudden thunder, but with steady rain. Markets became places of fairness. Fields were shared, not hoarded. Schools were built in villages once forgotten. Elders sat beside children, sharing stories, passing down truth like seeds in fertile soil. Zara never wore a crown. She wore a head wrap of indigo cotton, gift from the women of Kalenga. And though her name became known across valleys and deserts, she remained Zara, the girl who listened before she spoke, who walked barefoot when others sat on thrones. Kofi led with humility, but he always said, "The wisest voice in this kingdom sleeps beside me." Together, they built not an empire of gold, but of trust. People traveled from distant lands to witness this strange kingdom, where justice walked like a friend and kings dined with fishermen. But far from Amadou, in a small, quiet corner of the land, Ngolo lived in silence. Stripped of power, his estates sold, his servants gone, he now lived alone in a simple hut near the edge of the forest. The gold he once flaunted had long disappeared, stolen, wasted, or bartered for survival. He no longer walked with pride. His eyes, once sharp and proud, now searched the ground. He was not hated. He was forgotten. And that was the worst fate of all. One day, as the wind shifted and the scent of change traveled across the land, an old woman visited his hut. She carried a bowl of water and a staff carved with patterns that seemed to move. In the light, Ngolo opened the door and stared at her. "I know you," he said. "You do," she replied, "but not fully." She stepped inside and sat down. "You were once feared," she said. "Now you are alone." Ngolo looked at the ground. "I thought fear was respect." The woman stirred the water in her bowl. "You offered gold too." "A girl who saw through it." "I offered her the world," he muttered. "No," she replied gently. "You offered her a cage painted in riches." He looked up. What became of her? The woman smiled. "She became the world you couldn't offer." He was silent for a long time. Then he asked, "Do you think she ever hated me?" The woman looked into her bowl. She never hated you, but she did pity you. Why? Because you mistook possession for love, and love, child, is never a thing to be bought. She stood slowly and walked to the door. Is there redemption for men like me? He asked. She turned back. There is redemption for those who seek it, not with gold, but with humility, not with words, but with change. And then she was gone, and Amadou years flowed like a quiet river. Zara and Kofi aged with grace. Children were born. Songs were sung in marketplaces about the girl who walked away from wealth and became a queen of hearts. One day, as Zara sat under the mango tree in the palace garden, a young girl approached. Is it true, the girl asked, that you refused the richest man in the world? Zara smiled. Yes. Why? Zara placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. Because I already had something greater. What? Freedom, and the courage to choose it. The girl sat beside her. Wide-eyed Zara leaned closer. Riches shine, child, but they fade. Wisdom grows. Love, when true, roots itself deep. And freedom. Freedom breathes life into everything. The wind moved gently through the trees. The birds sang without fear, and far above, the ancestors watched with pride, for they knew the story of Zara would never be forgotten. It would live in the hearts of daughters who dared to speak, in the sons who chose kindness over power, and in every soul brave enough to walk away from gold in search of truth. This was the tale of the girl who refused the richest man, and, in doing so, became the richest of all. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know where are you watching from. Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy. Goodbye.